Hello and welcome to a look at a space taxi for the Commodore 64, a game that was released by Muse software in 1984. And I do want to draw attention to 1984 because a game of that age you wouldn't necessarily expect much, but this game actually delivers. The concept is very simple. You are a taxi driver, except for the fact that you are a taxi flyer who has to pick up passengers and deliver them to the platforms they want to be delivered to, while making sure not to smack into things and avoiding obstacles on later levels. The money you earn for delivering the passengers is your score, and while there is a fixed fee for taking passengers from one platform to another, if they are very happy with your flying, driving, they will give you a tip, and that tip can be rather substantial. So you ideally want to make sure that the travel is as pleasant for the passenger as possible. It's basically avoiding excessive movement and hard landings. As you progress through the levels themselves will become quite challenging, very early on actually. And if you consider the fact that the game has a total of 25 screens, 24 of which are accessible by just playing, but the 25th screen is only accessible by beating all the other 24 levels. There's actually quite a lot of game in this game. From a graphical point of view, it may not be the most impressive looking game, but again, bear in mind 1984, and for 1984 game, it's not half bad looking. The level design themselves, they are theme based, as you may have gathered by now, and the graphical quality definitely showcases the theme in a very clean way. There may not be anything spectacular about the levels, but you can easily identify and associate levels with the theme they are based on. The taxi itself looks believable, and of course, the passengers are small men. And again, as I said, for a game from 1984, I'm actually quite happy with how it looks. From the sound side, things becomes slightly more complicated because the original Commodore 64, the so-called bread box, featured the SID chip known as the 6581. And Commodore later released a Commodore 64 version, a reduced cost version called the C64C, which in looks were much closer to the Amiga 500, but in that process they also replaced, upgraded, whatever you call it, the SID chip to the 8580. And there was a significant change in sound between the two chips. For the 8580, musical quality was overall improved compared to the original SID chip. Some people would probably argue against, but I think in general people agreed that the musical quality um, was improved by the replaced SID chip. But something like sample speech, of which this game actually contains a significant amount, was virtually muted. I think most people playing Commodore 64 games would agree that what made the SID sound special was mainly the music more so than the sound effects. So I think a lot of people were okay with the sacrifice, but at the same time, for a game where speech was so heavily featured and actually quite gameplay relevant, it is a bit of a shame to have lost it in the translation, so to speak. The controls, considering the fact that you are basically controlling a vehicle that moves like a feather in a hurricane, the controls have always impressed me about this game because they are spot on. You, of course, have to counteract gravity and momentum, so you constantly have to make small adjustments so that you don't smack into things or land too hard and all that stuff. And the sense of control is amazing, absolutely amazing. Um, in that regard, this game has always impressed me because you are always in full control. If you go too fast, it's your own fault. It's not because the game is robbing you, cheating you in any way, shape, or form. You have absolute minute control over your space taxi. And that is super important, of course, for a game that requires um, decision movement like this game does. The gameplay can range from amazing to extremely frustrating, but it is one of those games where patience will pay off in the long run. And if you have the patience and like these kind of half puzzle games, there's an awful lot to be had out of Space Taxi. It's very, very enjoyable. As I said, can be frustrating because sometimes you have to maneuver your taxi in small, narrow corridors where you have all sorts of things going off on the screen at the same time. But it is something that can be learned and something that can be mastered. For a 1984 game, this has always impressed me from a pure quality point of view. Maybe not the best game ever made, but the overall quality is surprisingly high. But to emphasize what I was saying about the 6581 chip, I have added a chunk of gameplay showcasing that chip in action. And you'll probably be surprised by the speech. Passenger calling out for the taxi. And once you pick the passenger up, they will call out where they want to go. And you can actually hear it. The speed quality might not be super high compared to more modern um, devices, of course, but I mean, for 1984, this was actually quite spectacular. You can likely hear that the musical quality is a bit more rough, but it is definitely worth hearing this game as it was meant to sound. At a personal level, I prefer the 8580 over the original chip because I've always liked the music more than the sound effects, but each to their own. Overall, though, Space Taxi, challenging, frustrating, but ultimately a very, very rewarding and enjoyable little game. On that note, thanks for watching, take care, see you next time, bye bye for now.